Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Roundup. I'm your host, Spencer, the Guru Urquhart, alongside me, Gabe Henderson. How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. Excited. It's been an exciting week of football, and we finally got an exciting primetime game last night. So
Yeah, kind of a surprise there. Bengals, Jags. Wasn't expecting a whole lot out of that, but yeah, very exciting. It was fun for fantasy up until the Trevor Lawrence injury, which is going to be a big topic here on today's show. Speaking of our topics, let's get right into it with our headlines. Actually, I lied. Before we do that, got to shout out our sponsor, Caesars Sportsbook. Make sure to head on over to Caesars to check out the risk-free first bet deal if you haven't done so already. All right, well, now let's get into these headlines here. And it starts off with the Trevor Lawrence news. He has suffered a high ankle sprain last night that's likely going to keep him out multiple weeks. Christian Kirk also suffered an injury, a groin injury. He's set to miss time as well, probably multiple weeks for both. Tough break for the Jaguars. They were really trending up here lately. Trevor Lawrence was finally getting into a rhythm after a slow start, but it appears that his season could be over, at least the regular season, which is a tough break for us fantasy football players. So we'll just have to wait and see on that. We'll have more discussion on that coming up. Justin Jefferson is set to return this week. He had been out like 6 weeks, I believe, with the hamstring injury. Killed people that took him first overall, like yours truly. But if you've been able to survive his absence and are still in playoff contention, well, great news. He's supposed to be back this week, which is the last week before the playoffs in a lot of leagues, including our Bayou Bets Listener League, which we're about to get to that here in a little bit, the Listener League recap. Ramondre Stevenson, he's expected to miss multiple weeks with an ankle injury similar to Trevor, a high ankle sprain there. He's expected to probably miss the rest of the fantasy season. So Zeke Elliott, anyone that's had Zeke Elliott stashed, there you go. He'll probably be the workhorse and what's on an ugly Patriots offense, but they seem to be able to run the ball fairly okay. So Zeke might have some value there down the stretch. And a tough break for the Texans as well. Tank Dell, we talked about the Jaguars having major injuries on offense. Well, the Texans didn't avoid the injury bug either. The two teams duking it out for the AFC South. Well, the Colts are now in that mix too. But Tank Dell is out for the season. Lower leg fracture. Sucks to see it. Tank Dell have been having a great rookie season. Him and CJ Stroud, such a special combo. I know Gabe was enjoying that. And just, man, I was so sad to see it because then you could tell CJ was heartbroken because him and Tank Dell seem to have a good bond.
yeah, I think the Texans have enough talent in that wide receiver room to step up, though. Guys like Noah Brown, Robert Woods, who haven't been as big recently, but have come through big at various points this season. And you know what? Even Nico Collins, he got around 70% of the receiving work that CJ Stroud had the other day when he had a big game. So, I wouldn't be surprised to see all of them step up and all of them have fantasy value going forward.
Right, yeah, Texans definitely have a lot of other weapons there. That's a silver lining there for with the Tank Dell injury. So got Nico Collins, Noah Brown, and they said Dalton Schultz should be back. So yeah, got other options, and maybe even John Mechie might have a chance to step up. So let's get to let's talk more about this Jaguar stuff because that's probably was the biggest news of the week. I didn't expect to see that last night. I mean, it was such a crazy game, back and forth, back and forth. I was like, what is this? Like, I didn't really watch the first half. I was like, oh, probably just go for my walk in the first half. And in the second half, if it was good, I'll put it on. I was like, okay, well, this is good. So I was watching the second half there and was impressed by Trevor. I was like, let's go. Like, he kept scoring. He got that rushing touchdown there. I was like, yes. And then the Jags were making a comeback, had them in the teaser. For best bets, just needed to win by a freaking field goal. Thanks a lot, Brandon McMahon. It's just, oh, man, it was so frustrating because even without Trevor, they seem to do okay. And I know the question is going to come up, is the Jaguars' offense cooked now that Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk are set to miss time? But they definitely didn't look cooked last night.
No, I don't think they will be. I mean, it begs the question, it was the same thing when Gardner Minshew came in against the Texans in week 2 for Anthony Richardson. Teams just don't often prepare for backup quarterbacks, so you can see some success there. But, CJ Beathard in his 49ers days, he looked decent. I'm not going to say he's a week in, week out starter, but, as far as backups go, he's one of the better ones. So he's got enough weapons around him. I think the Jaguars run the ball well enough to be able to make this work short term while Lawrence is out.
Yeah, I could get on board with that because, they've also still got Evan Ingram, Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones, and he said running it with Travis Etienne, who's hadn't been quite as good lately. He had a great start to the season, but he's kind of slumped. But hopefully he can pick things up. They're going to need him to, because I think they're an offense though with Doug Peterson. He'll get creative enough to at least keep them afloat. The thing I'm most worried about is Calvin Ridley drawing top coverage. It's really the Christian Kirk thing that's got me concerned here. I mean, it sucks that you lose Trevor Lawrence, but I don't feel like CJ Beathard is going to be a complete train wreck as the backup. The thing with Christian Kirk being out, though, is now who's going to step up in 3 wide sets? I know that Parker Washington, the young receiver, did good last night, but is that for real? I'm not sure. And if Calvin Ridley starts drawing the top coverage, will he still be good? He wasn't that good last night, so it'll be interesting to see. I'm a little worried about their receivers, but I think Etienne will be just fine. And then Beathard, I don't really like him this week. I believe they get the Browns, but he could be a streamer some weeks moving forward, I feel like.
Yeah, the Browns defense hasn't been as good recently, but they're still one of the top defenses in the league. It's a really tough draw for CJ Beathard in his first game, presumably going to be starting. They haven't announced that. There's no way Trevor Lawrence comes back in time for that. If anyone saw that injury, he's lucky to only come out with a sprain.
Yeah, he looked like he was in serious pain. That looked like a severe high ankle sprain, and thankfully it wasn't the dreaded broken leg like we saw with Tank Dell. And that segues into our next question. Can the Texans keep rolling without Tank Dell? I know you had mentioned all the weapons the Texans have, but go back to Mechie, I'd mentioned, and Robert Woods. I mean, those guys have been, other than that early stretch where Woods had that was good, those guys have basically been no-shows. And then Noah Brown just coming back from injury to where, who do you see, Gabe, stepping up here? I mean, I know Brown's had his moments and Woods was pretty good early, but who would you expect? We know Nico is the number one. Who would you expect to see the biggest target increase in Tank Dell's absence?
In terms of target, I would probably say Noah Brown. The Texans have had a revolving door receiving core all season. Throughout the season, everyone has been hurt, at least missed one game, whether it's Nico Collins, now Tank Dell, Robert Woods, Noah Brown. Everyone's just kind of missing each. It's been a next man up mentality. But, when it comes to running the type of routes that Tank Dell ran, you got to look to Noah Brown, who has been able to get open downfield, whereas Robert Woods is more of a safety blanket over the middle of the field in short to medium yard situations.
For sure. Yeah, I'm not messing with Robert Woods. He just seems to just be kind of washed at this point. But yeah, Mechie, though, I think could maybe play a role there. It seems like Nico's got that intermediate role on lock to where maybe Mechie could be an explosive playmaker there. They also got Dalton Schultz for the
I was just going to say that. Yeah, Dalton Schultz, who's coming back from injury. Don't know if he'll be back this week, but, if you're looking for a tight end, I didn't put it on my waiver ads, but if Dalton Schultz is out, Brevin Jordan had a really good game. I think he had 60-odd yards or something last week. He's 8, 9, 10 points. And I think especially with Tank Dell out, CJ Stroud's going to need some guys, and Brevin Jordan stepped up last week.
For sure. And one more thing before we move on to the listener league. For those Saints fans tuning in, Derek Carr is in concussion protocol, most likely out this week. Is expecting it to be Jameis. We won't spend too much time on that, though, because let's be real. I mean, Derek Carr and Jameis, that's irrelevant for fantasy. You don't want to have to be starting either one of those guys because, the Saints have some weapons. I guess it could be worse, but it's just, to me, it's just not good enough to be worried about it. And also the weapons, I think Olave, if anything, might benefit from Jameis, but he had a good game last week with Carr, so I don't really see the Carr to Jameis thing affecting too much for fantasy.
No, I think A.T. Perry is actually someone to look at. I considered putting him on my waiver wire ads because Jameis is someone, who throws the ball downfield a lot more, takes a lot more risks. And, as Michael Thomas and every other Saints fan on the planet just about pointed out, A.T. Perry was open a lot on Sunday. So, he's the big plays are there. They just need to find him. And I think Jameis is someone who could do that.
That's a good point. Yeah, he could be another. I don't think either one of us had him on waivers, but if you're in our waiver recommendations, that is. But for deeper leagues, definitely keep an eye on A.T. Perry. He could be a sleeping giant that could wake up for the stretch run.
Yeah, he was someone I considered putting on there, but I saw a better option, which we'll get to here in a little bit.
For sure, for sure. So before we get to that, let's get to our listener league update here. And it had some big moves made by a lot of teams looking to punch their tickets into the playoffs. The biggest one was done by William. Team Run CMC got back in the win column with the highest total of the week there, taking down co-host Gabe there. Gabe's total wasn't even bad, 136.5, but just ran into a buzzsaw there at Run CMC, who's now in position to get the 4 seed. Gabe currently the 3 seed there at 8-5. That could change though, because we still have one more week of regular season action left. And Uncle Big Nick, man, I couldn't take Uncle Big Nick out of contention. My team laid a fat egg, 89. That was not what I wanted to see, but probably wouldn't have mattered because UBN had the second highest total, trying to get back to 500. And if he does, might sneak into the playoffs there, still alive there. Team UBN trying to do his best without Joe Burrow. Mike, he's into the playoffs there at 9-4, trying to get that 1 seed potentially. He took down original Saints fan there. And then speaking of that 1 seed, Hank Trill, Team Latino Heat, in position for that right now. He just needs to win this week and he'll get it. He has clinched a bye week though, so even if he loses, he'll still get the 2 seed at the very least. The Bucktown Rebel, they're back in contention there. Roy, he took down the Bayou Bandits, Joseph, who are now out of playoff contention. Bucktown would be in position, I think, for the 6 seed. I think I'm currently in position for the 5 seed, and Bucktown would be the 6. But you can't count out Salmon. I'm on a roll. Also at 7-6. He has the least amount of points, though, of those 7-6 teams. So he's currently on the outside looking in. But if a couple of them lose, he might sneak in with a win next week. He took down Bucktown Rebel Jr. there and Cameron, who's also eliminated now from contention. But that was a spicy week there, Gabe. That was a lot of interesting action as teams try to gear up for the playoffs. I was hoping to clinch my spot, but nope, UBN had other plans.
Yeah, I'm just thankful that I was able to clinch a spot last week going into this, because I would have been super upset if I lost in the way that I did this week and hadn't clinched yet. So, I had some injuries on my team, kept me from getting up in that 160 range, but I'll take a 140 thereabout week from my team as we get ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're comfortable now. And you can still get a bye week if you win and Mike loses. So, yeah. So I think I'll still get in. I've got a pretty high point total on the season. So there's still a chance I could get in even if I lose. But I feel like I definitely need to win to make sure I don't fall out of there. Because, I saw it at 5-0. Don't want to have the embarrassment of an epic collapse like that. So, yeah, Guru Squad got to get back on track. But for those that have questions, let's do a little Q&A here before our waiver wires. We'll have another one at the end, but we'll do our first little Q&A segment here. And we got one I see from Corion. He says, any concern about a West Coast team, in this case the Rams, playing the Ravens like when the Seahawks played the Ravens? Geno is pretty awful in that game. How should we feel about Stafford? Stafford's been rolling lately. He looks healthy. I wouldn't be too concerned. I feel like he'll have an okay game, but he definitely isn't someone I'd recommend starting because he doesn't run. Ravens have a really good pass rush secondary. Their whole defense is loaded. So I'd say Stafford, he'd probably still be worth starting in super flex, but for single QB, don't start him against the Ravens.
I was going to say, more so than the travel, I think that speaks volumes about how good this Ravens defense is. Everyone talks about the Cowboys, the Eagles, the 49ers, the Chiefs even as the best teams in the league. But, a lot of people are sleeping on the Ravens. I think they could be the most complete team in the league. And it's that defense. As far as Stafford, he's always going to get his, especially with weapons like he has available to him with Puka, Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams has been a nice surprise. So, I mean, I as Spencer said, in Superflex, I'd play Stafford. I would still play some of his weapons, even Kyron Williams, because of the pass catching ability that he has. But I wouldn't play Stafford in anything but a Superflex.
100%. So looks like that is our only question here. So I guess we'll circle back to the Q&A here at the end for those that have waivers, trade questions, start sits. This is crunch time, y'all. Playoffs on the line here this week. So make sure to get those in if you need advice. So let's do our waiver segment now. I'll kick it off here with my quarterback ad, Jake Browning, y'all. Big Monday Night Football outing, and I think it might be legit. He's only rostered in 12% of leagues. And I mean, that's an offense that with Joe Burrow is one of the best in the NFL. And he seemed to have finally gotten in a rhythm last night. And he was saying in the post-game interview how he just needed a little time to really get it going. He said he feels like he was pretty calm last night and was just kind of gotten that rhythm. Chase had a big game, utilizing one of the top receivers in the game well. And yeah, I just feel like he's got the ability to keep this going in that system. It's a very fantasy-friendly offense. They throw the ball a lot. I don't think he's really like a mobile guy, but in that offense, you don't really need to be. I mean, when you got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, and Joe Mixon as well catching passes, that's about all you need. So we'll see if he keeps it going. I think he's got a fairly decent matchup this week. So maybe throw him in the super flex spot. Probably wouldn't start him yet in single QB, but he's going to be a solid QB2 in single QB because we've got so many QB injuries this season. I mean, Trevor Lawrence being the latest, you can't ever count on just one QB. I'd say even in single QB leagues, you need to have at least 2 QBs rostered here for the stretch run. So if you're still needing that second option there, Browning is someone that I'd recommend.
I just knew, when you texted me and asked for my waiver picks as usual, as you do before the show, I kind of knew Jake Browning would be your guy. That's why I went in another direction. I didn't want to steal your thunder there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you could have. I mean, I would have, I've got a laundry list of names. You could steal all my thunder. I'd dig somebody out of there. Although last week's recommendation of Kenny Pickett was pretty bad. So, I mean, he did get hurt during the game.
Yeah,
so
I mean, that's something you can't really kick yourself over.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully Browning doesn't have that happen. Hopefully it's not a curse of Spencer's QB waiver wire recommendation. So, yeah. But anyway, let's move on to running backs here. Roschon Johnson. I had him last week, and I have him again on this list because he's someone that falls through the cracks with the Bears not being a good football team. But for fantasy, we don't care about that. Look at the Patriots. Arguably the worst football team in the league, but Ramondre Stevenson was killing it for fantasy the past few weeks before his injury. And I think Roschon Johnson could be in a similar spot. They still have Khalil Herbert, but he's nothing special. Plus, he's not very good as a receiver. Roschon is definitely the go-to receiving option in that backfield. And as a runner, he's pretty solid. He's at least probably about a 50-50 split in carries there with Herbert, Foreman. Deonta Foreman seems to have fallen out of the rotation. So I feel like Roschon, they're a young team. They're going to want to go young down the stretch. So I think Roschon receives a big workload there. And then with Fields at QB, it's still going to be a good amount of running. So I feel like Roschon's a very solid ad here. I can't believe he's rostered in that few of leagues.
Yeah, me neither. He's been really solid this season. And, I've said it since the beginning. This is always how I felt about that Bears backfield. Anyone not named Khalil Herbert's going to be on my radar because they actually run the ball surprisingly well, especially with their other 2 backs.
Right, yeah, because Foreman, when Herbert's out, because Foreman's kind of like the backup to Herbert, he usually does well. But with Herbert, not really much for Foreman. Roschon, though, is the solid. He's the complement, but I think he could end up being the main guy, kind of like it was like Eckler was the complement to Melvin Gordon, and then he ends up being the main guy. I kind of see Roschon getting more work here down the stretch. So we'll see how it goes. I like him. So get him. You know, he's rostered in very few leagues. Another one I like at receiver, Jameson Williams. This is more of a dart throw because with the Lions, we know Amon-Ra and Laporta are the main guys, but I'm thinking that the Lions are going to have to start getting more creative. Their offense has gotten a little bit stale. Let's be real. I know they got off to that great start against the Saints, but after that, it was not all that special. But then they ran that great play there in the second half with Jameson featured on that touchdown run, on that creative kind of play design. I think we're going to start seeing more of that. So before he begins to become a more feature part of the offense, go add him in fantasy and stash him, because we all know how explosive that Lions offense can be. And if they can get their stuff together, Jameson, I think, is going to be a big reason why, because teams know now. I mean, Dennis Allen admitted in the Saints presser that, you know, you just like the key to stopping them, which, I mean, the Saints didn't do that well at it, but he was saying like the big key to stopping them is shutting down Amon-Ra, because they're so dependent on Amon-Ra. And when you've got an elite talent like Jameson Williams, I mean, he hadn't really put up elite numbers, but he's definitely got elite ability, as he showed with Alabama. So to me, his upside in that offense is worth taking a chance on.
Yeah, and you got to think, I mean, he was suspended for the first part of the season, so he's really just now getting into midseason form. So, you know, once he's rounding that corner, I think there's potential there, and I think if you're going to try and get him before he peaks, now would be a good time.
100%. And then a tight end, I got Isaiah Likely. He's someone that had a couple weeks ago and was surprised that he was still available in this many leagues. I guess a lot of people dropped him with the Ravens having their bye, but to me, he's a must-add at this point at that position. I mean, the tight end position, let's be frank, it sucks. I mean, it's just not any outside the top 4 or 5 guys. It's pretty bleak. And with Mark Andrews out, Isaiah Likely should have an increased role. I know Zay Flowers is probably the guy now in Baltimore as far as the receiving pecking order. But I still think Likely is like at least the third option. It's probably Zay and OBJ at the top. And then even though they don't throw a whole lot, Lamar, we all know, loves to throw to the tight end position. And Isaiah Likely is about all they have there. Ravens used to be a very deep team at that position. Now they're a little bit thin there. And so I think Likely is going to get the volume there. He's not the talent of Mark Andrews. Let's be real. I don't expect him to put up those kind of numbers, but we don't need him to. We just need him to be a serviceable option, which I think he will be moving forward.
Yeah, you know, I think we saw last season with Andrews out for those few weeks what kind of tight end he could really be. He hasn't shown it this season, but he was better last game, and I think after a bye week, more time with the ones, you know, he'll get another opportunity this week, and I think he's going to shine.
Yes, indeed. Let's move on now to Gabe's waiver wire options here. Gardner Minshew, the mustache mania man, had a big game, led the Colts to an overtime win.
Yeah, you know, the Colts offense is the best part of that team, and Gardner Minshew is doing a really good job. He's got a lot of weapons around him. He's slinging the rock, not putting up the best fantasy numbers, but, you know, I think he's got some favorable matchups going forward, and I think the Colts offense will continue to roll.
Yeah, they seem to really be trending up right now. Shane Steichen, one of the league's of good young head coaches there, an innovator, a Nick Sirianni disciple there at the Eagles. That offense not slowing down. The Colts seem to have kind of got a lot of that mojo going. And even though they lost Anthony Richardson, Minshew's definitely done his part.
Yeah, definitely. For running back, I have Jerick McKinnon. I know this one won't jump off the page to a lot of people, but here's the thing. Anyone who's won a title with Jerick McKinnon knows around this time of the year, he starts to pick it up. And when the Chiefs struggle, you know, with the bad receivers that they have, with all the drops that they've had, and especially with a loss to Green Bay in prime time, they're going to have to do something different on offense. And Jerick McKinnon, you know, go to old reliable. I think, you know, if you're having running back troubles, or if you just need a guy who could potentially play in the playoffs or a championship for you, he's a guy that you could turn to who, you know, if Patrick Mahomes did what he did last season and looked to him late, I think McKinnon could have a big role.
That's a good point you made about him being really good for the fantasy playoffs, because you're right about that. I had him in a few leagues last year, and he was clutch.
Yeah.
So he hadn't had nearly the kind of year this year. He's been a bust. I mean, let's be real, but he's someone that if he can get healthy, he's been hurt lately, but if he's healthy, then yeah, I could maybe see him having a role because CEH has done terrible as the complement to Pacheco. Pacheco clearly the top dog there now, but McKinnon's someone with the Chiefs not really having many reliable receivers. He's someone that Mahomes leans on as a safety blanket. So yeah, it's the path is there.
Yeah, that one's more of a long-term play as opposed to, need running back help this week. But as you mentioned, the injury, he's still got to come back from that. But if the Chiefs continue to struggle on offense, they might start involving McKinnon a lot more.
Yes, sir. And then Devontae Parker had a pretty solid week this past week with Bailey Zappi, only rostered in 2.5% of leagues.
Yeah, with Mario Douglas out, and potentially coming back this week, potentially not. Devontae Parker, when he's been healthy this season, credit to him, he's been pretty good. He's put up back-to-back solid weeks despite the Patriots not scoring any points last week. He could potentially be a touchdown threat. The only way is up for the Patriots in terms of scoring. So Devontae Parker, he's a guy that I'm looking at in these deep leagues where, you need flex help, you need receiver help. He's someone who can really step up and take away some of the target share and really step up in a New England offense that really doesn't have many weapons, especially with Ramondre out now.
Yeah, all good points there. I mean, it's one of those things. Someone's got to catch passes over there. And even though they didn't score a single point last week, he got enough targets there, and Parker did to still be somewhat relevant in PPR leagues. So Demario Douglas currently has a concussion. It's his second of the season, so he might miss multiple weeks. And if he does, then yeah, Parker's the number one over there. So yeah, he's worth a dart throw, I'd say. And then you got Chiggy Okonkwo at tight end there. He had a pretty solid week last week.
Yeah, anyone who watches Red Zone knows that the week really started out with Chiggy Okonkwo's big play. He's another guy similar to Devontae Parker who's really just put together a few solid weeks, and that's consistency is all you can really ask for at the tight end position. The Titans have a rookie quarterback; they're struggling, so they might try and dial it back a little bit after Will Levis's big game to start his career. He hasn't been as successful recently. The DeAndre Hopkins is struggling a little bit down the stretch, not always the most consistent receiver here this season. And Chiggy Okonkwo is just a reliable target. So, as far as tight end goes, you know what you're going to get out of Okonkwo down the stretch, and I think that's hugely important.
Right, yeah, hard to find consistency at the tight end position. So, yeah, and he's been pretty consistent with Will Levis. I think he was on my list a few weeks back, so someone that's had him stashed, kudos to you, but if you don't have him and he's rostered in a lot of leagues, and yeah, go get him if you need help at that position.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's our week 14 waiver wire recommendations. Make sure to get your waivers in before the deadline hits. I think it's like midnight tonight in most leagues, so make sure to do that as we prepare for the playoffs. And so we got our last Q&A segment coming up. I see we got a couple of questions in the chat, but before we do that, let's get to our week 14 best flex. Let's get it, y'all. Gabe here has DeAndre Swift going against Dallas. Let us know why you like Swifty in that flex spot this week, despite the tough matchup.
Yeah, the thing that'll jump out to everyone at first is the fact that he does play Dallas, one of the best defenses in the league. But I think it's going to be a sneaky good week for DeAndre Swift. They really didn't use him much last week. The Eagles, put the ball in Jalen Hurts' hands against the 49ers. And, honestly, I was scratching my head all game. As a Jalen Hurts fantasy owner, I was happy with it. But, as someone who enjoys to watch winning football, enjoys watching winning football, I don't know why they didn't even give DeAndre Swift much of a try. I know the 49ers have a great rush defense, but I mean, the Eagles' offensive line, when fully healthy, which it's back to healthy now that Lane Johnson's back, can be so dominant. They get so much push up front, and DeAndre Swift is such a weapon when he's at his best. So I wouldn't be surprised after last week's shellacking to see, Nick Sirianni and co. turn it back and be a little more conservative and run the ball down Dallas's throats, hopefully. Keep the ball out of the hands of Dak Prescott in that explosive offense.
Yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, with the tough matchup, Swift might not be an RB2 like he's been most of the season. But yeah, I definitely feel good about throwing him in that flex spot because, yeah, as you mentioned, that offensive line, you could put almost any running back there and they could have success. I mean, look at Miles Sanders. He took Miles Sanders out of Philly, put him on Carolina. He's trash. So there you go. So yeah, I'm with you on Swift being a solid flex play. I kind of went with the opposite approach here with mine. I went with the player that's kind of struggled on the season. He hadn't had a very good season there. That's Falcons wideout Drake London, but he has a great matchup this week against the sorry Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary. So I think this is a week Drake London gets back on track. I had George Pickens in the spot last week. He did pretty good against the Cardinals, even with the QB stuff. So who knows with the Falcons, they might have more QB trouble. It's hard to trust Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke, but we know that Drake London's the clear one over there. They're going to pepper him with targets. The Bucs don't have good coverage, so I'm thinking London, even if he doesn't find the end zone, he has a solid receptions and yardage floor, and he hadn't scored. I don't think he's a big target. Hadn't scored those since like week 5. I think that changes this week. I see Drake London having a very strong week, but while I wouldn't trust him as a WR1 or 2, I feel like he's a very strong flex play.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I've talked about over the last few weeks, I liked some of the receivers going against Tampa Bay recently. They give up a lot of yards through the air, and Drake London obviously is one of the most dominant players on that offense.
Yep. Hadn't been a whole lot of dominating though from that offense. So just need a solid flex week from him. That's all we need. Probably won't dominate. I mean, they suck, but just give me a solid 15 points. I'll take that.
I don't think anybody can dominate with Desmond Ridder as your quarterback.
Facts. So, all right. Well, those are our best flexes. Make sure to take note of that when setting your lineup. And all right, so to close out our Q&A, George had one for us. Let's start off with his. And anyone else with questions, y'all, don't be shy. Get them in here before we sign off. He says, hey, guys, I lost Tank Dell. My other wideouts are Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Deontay Johnson, and JSN. Should I pick up another wide receiver? Am I good with what I have?
I think you're pretty good with what you have in terms of depth. I personally always like to carry about 5 or 6 receivers, so you're right in that sweet spot. But, if Tank Dell was a regular contributor for you, no harm in picking someone else up.
Right, yeah. I mean, you have Tank Dell, who's donezo, so you have basically a free roster spot now. I mean, he's not doing you any good unless it's a dynasty league, but I'm assuming this is a redraft, so yeah, just drop Tank Dell, and you could add, one of the guys on our waiver recommendations list. Gabe had. Who'd you have, Gabe, for receiver? Devontae Parker. I had Jamison Williams. We had mentioned A.T. Perry earlier in the show. Just pick up one of those guys. I'd probably say, Parker's more of a floor play. I feel like you've got Deontay and JSN who are pretty good floor plays. I'd probably use the Tank Dell thing. I'd take a shot on either Jamison or Perry. I feel like both of them have a lot of upside, and I think that's kind of what you need here with this receiving core. Because, Olave's got a solid amount of upside. Waddle kind of does. Kupp's more of a floor play. Deontay's a floor play. So I'd go with an upside play. Oh, now he just dropped a bunch of names here. OBJ to Mario Douglas, Michael Wilson, Hyatt, or Josh Palmer. Ooh, man, I don't know. Maybe OBJ, because he's got some upside. Hyatt, maybe. I don't really like any of those options, though. Douglas had another concussion, so they might just get shut down. Wilson, I forgot what his injury was, but he's been out, it seems like, forever now. I wouldn't trust him. And then Palmer, he might get shut down with the Chargers being terrible this year. So I'd probably say either OBJ or Hyatt if I had to go at one of those.
You know what, Spencer? You didn't have the benefit of this, but obviously George just sent another message.
Khalil Herbert or Tajay Spears.
Yeah.
In
terms of receivers, it'd be OBJ or Douglas for me if Douglas can come back from that concussion. But out of all of those options that you listed, I think Tajay Spears with Derrick Henry not 100% is the play here.
For sure. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Even I think Henry, they said he's not in concussion protocols anymore. So all right, I don't think he ever had to enter it. They thought he may have had a concussion, but looks like he's fine. But yeah, I think Spears and Sarah Keene, that's not really a contender. I think they'll get Spears more involved down the stretch. So yeah, I like him as a speculative ad. JN Sports Cards, what's up, bro? Start 2, Pacheco, A-Chain, Barkley, or Kyren. Man, it must be nice to have all those options. Those are, if you survive the Kyren, A-Chain, IR stints, then man, your team's really looking nice right now. That's a good problem to have. I'm just looking at the schedule here. Barkley gets the Packers. Kyren gets the Ravens. A-Chain gets the Titans. And Pacheco
The Bills.
gets the Bills. Yep. Okay. So, okay. I'd probably lean here. I mean, A-Chain is just so explosive. I think I'd go A-Chain for 1. And then 2, I mean, Pacheco, the Bills, kind of tough. Kyren, the Ravens, tough. Who does Barkley get again? The Packers, right? Yeah, so. The Packers. Okay, yeah, you can run on them. I think I'd go Barkley and A-Chain. Go Barkley and A-Chain.
I hate having to sit Kyren because he's been so explosive. He's almost a must play at this point. But against a Ravens defense, and when you have this sort of depth at running back, I would probably go A-Chain and Barkley as well.
Yeah, I mean, in this league, this must be a pretty shallow league because all these in 12-man leagues would be must starts. So Diggs, Pittman, or AJ. Damn sports cards. You just freaking made all kind of trades and got your team loaded. That's I know, or it could be a smaller league, but let's see who I'd go. I'm guessing that's AJ Brown. He's at Dallas. Diggs at the Chiefs, and then who was the third one? Pittman at the Bengals. I'd probably just go Diggs and A.J. Brown. I mean, Pittman's been good, but, I mean, Diggs and A.J. Brown, those are top 5 receivers.
And not only that, a lot of people look at the Kansas City secondary and their numbers this year. They've been struggling recently. So I think Diggs is definitely a smart play. And A.J. Brown's a must-start if you have him in any league. Doesn't matter the opponent. He's an elite receiver. He finds a way to get his almost every week.
100%. And this might be the toughest question of them all because of the matchup here. Normally, I'd for sure say C.J. Stroud the way he's been playing. But Justin Fields or C.J. Stroud. Fields gets the Lions who have been struggling. Stroud gets the Jets who aren't that good, but their secondary is very good.
They are. I would still go C.J. Stroud. Cover up my chest. I think Stroud, he's gotten his against almost every defense he played this year, except for the Ravens. And that was week 1. That was his first ever start on the road in Baltimore. So that's probably the toughest assignment you can get. I would continue to roll with the hot-handed CJ Stroud. I think especially if he gets Dalton Schultz back this week, he's someone you can rely on. You know what you're going to get from him.
Yeah, can't really argue with that. I think the Lions might get back on track this week. So I think I'd lean Stroud as well. The Jets, as good as their secondary's been, they might kind of just quit. I mean, especially with now they're looking like Rodgers won't play, Zach Wilson. I mean, no one even wants to play quarterback for them. So yeah, I'd go Stroud. Choose one for flex: Pittman, Kyren, Pacheco. Okay. Ah, damn. There's so many tough decisions here for a JN. All good options, but tough to decide on who to go with. I guess I have to pull up the schedule again. Pittman gets the Bengals. Kyren gets the Ravens. And was it Pacheco against the Bills?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I don't know, man. I'm guessing it's PPR, full PPR. I mean, if so, I'd probably lean Pittman. But, damn, it's hard to leave Kyren on the bench despite the tough matchup.
Yeah, that's where I am, I think I'll preface it. I think my decision is the same, but I think I'll, go ahead and say that none of these are going to be bad options. These are all guys who have done well recently, but if it is PPR, as Spencer alluded to, I would probably go Pittman as well. If it's not, then I think Kyren is definitely the play.
For sure. And he said they'd risky trades. Well, those risks paid off, bro. 8-man PPR, 7-6 win. He's in a crunch time spot there. Needs to win to get in. I think you'll win, bro. Your team's loaded. Just gotta hope you don't get in-game injuries like what happened to my dad here. Lost 3 of 8 starters, Lawrence, Tank, and Stevenson. I'm in this money league with him. That's actually music to my ears because me and him are fighting for the last playoff spot, and I'm getting Jefferson back this week, so I feel like the odds are in my favor there.
Should hear what happened to me in the Dynasty League that we're in together, Spencer. You know, I feel that. I had 2 players get injured, 7 players in single digits. I lost to a dude who didn't start a quarterback this week.
Oh man, yeah, that league. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get on Justin. Like, we gotta get that league straight. There's some people doing some kind of fishy stuff in there, so we're gonna have to make sure that doesn't end up like the Wild West. I think we're gonna have to start cracking the whip on some of these guys not setting their lineups, because it's like, if you're in a dynasty, y'all, just a PSA, set your damn lineup. Like, just come on, y'all. Like, I mean, you signed up for this league. You claim to be a big enough fantasy player to stick in it for the long term. Like, just set your damn lineup, people. Like, don't tank. It just goes against the spirit of it. Like, I mean, Bill Belichick, yeah, he's probably tanking with the Patriots right now, but he still has to start 22 players each week. So even if you aren't really that worried about winning, just at least fill out a lineup.
You know what, Spencer? My team did its best to combat the people who aren't starting line, combat the self-sabotaging tank this season.
Yeah.
So this week. One of those things you just got to throw your hands up. There's nothing you can do until your players get injured, especially when you've got 2 guys injured very early and 5 others scoring single digits. That's just one of those fluky weeks that just can't do much about.
Yeah, and in that same league, I just lost Trevor Lawrence, so I'm probably going to be trying to trade for a QB. Someone sent me an enticing offer recently that I might have to accept to upgrade my QB room. All I got is Jared Goff right now, so yeah, because of Mac Jones I had as my 3rd, but he's no longer the starter. So yeah, I got to make a move there because I'm a contender. I'm actually in first place in that league and managed to stay in first despite losing Jefferson. So we shall see how it goes, but I think that's it for questions, unless y'all have any more. We're about to sign off here. Any final thoughts, Gabe, before we go?
Not really. You know, just good luck to everyone who is in the last week of the regular season, and may everyone make the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty much mathematically alive in every league, but the issue is there's a lot that I'm not locked into. There's a few I clinched my spot this week, but there's also a hell of a lot that I'm very much on the bubble. So I'm hoping that I can have some good fortune this week. So that'll do it for this episode of the Fantasy Roundup. For Gabe Henderson, this is Spencer the Guru Urquhart wishing you good luck in week 14. Let's get in those playoffs, y'all. We'll be back again next week to break it all down. See y'all later.